Well, hello there. Thank you for coming, small but mighty team in here today. I appreciate you coming into this talk. Uh, and, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. So who am I? If you don't know who I am Michael Bateman. Everyone calls me Bateman. That's what I've been going by for a long time. I'm the community development manager at PIXERA. I'm also a digital media commissioner for the USITT Digital Media Commission. We'll talk more about that later and kind of how that works into this talk a little bit. And previously, I did a bunch of stuff. I was a production electrician at the Public Theater in New York here. I was on tour with a show called Marvel Universe Live. I was like a freelance designer. I think it was the second one. You did content for the first one, right? Yeah. And then I did some architectural lighting work at a firm called HLB Lighting. So I'm also these are my alma maters, not that important. I do D&D and I'm a former mascot. Those are my fun facts about me. So that's my elevator pitch. So pixel pushing what? I think we as an industry have been rushing to keep up with technological development for years, and that's starting to catch up with us as we kind of keep reinventing the wheel. It seems like sometimes we're doing projects where we've solved the problem before, or someone else has solved the problem, and then we go have to do it on a different project, and now we have to solve that project again. So the proposal, we need to get better at documenting things, documenting what we're doing, making paperwork, creating these sorts of things. So the purpose here is let's create our documentation process together. Let's do this together. So a disclaimer. Oh, there was a sound. Nice. Disclaimer. Okay, so here's the thing, right? No one is doing it wrong. Okay, this is not. I'm not here to call anyone out. I'm not trying to say people are doing their system diagrams wrong or doing any of their documentation practices wrong. We just haven't, as an industry, as a digital media industry, we have not defined what's quote unquote right. And that comes with some baggage, like, what is right, who's making that decision, right? I acknowledge that, but we haven't as an industry come together and really said, what are these things supposed to be? What do we want these things to look like for our whole process from the initial design all the way up through integration and implementation and programming and opening night or opening day or whatever thing we're doing. This is, again, not calling anyone out. This is an invitation to call in, right? I want us to come in together. I think framework is one of the great ways we can do that. Some of these conversations have been happening here, which is awesome. So this is an intent to call everybody in to solve this problem together collectively. Really I want to see what we can do as a bunch of people in a bunch of different spaces and organizations, and um, how can we make it better for everybody? So let's talk about our current practice, right? So right now, uh, there we go. This one animates. So right now, here's kind of our timeline, right? A client has an idea for a project. There's like some design firm or ad agency that's hired. The client's like, hey, I want to do this big cool thing, and then this design agency comes in and they're like, okay, so here's what it's going to be. It's going to look like this. It's going to kind of do this. We got some content. Then we get some integrator involved. We start talking about gear. We start getting manufacturers involved. We start doing RFPs, right? We start all those things, and somewhere along the way, we do programming and installation, right? And my argument is that this pipeline, and some people have been talking about it here, is not well defined, and we lose information along the way, right? And so between here and here, a lot of decisions get made. My laser pointer doesn't work on the TVs, unfortunately. So between here and here, we lose a lot of information, and that information exists somewhere. But where is it, and how do the people that are on the ground doing the thing get access to the information and those decisions that were made some time ago, right? Um, Another thing that we want to look at is who's currently involved, right? We have creative, we have technical, we have video engineering. If you've read Laura's book, she does a great job of kind of defining these three segments of what we do. Her line is getting the right piece of content to the correct screen at the correct moment in time, right? So that's kind of all of these things. Who's the creative side? Is it the client? Is it content designers? There's video engineering that's going on. There's integrators deciding on system components, converters, adapters, signal flow. And then there's technicians involved who are actually putting things together, and they're doing the programming, and they're developing software sometimes. I'm gonna sit now. Where does so like if we look at a theater, right? And I'm theater background, so some of this is gonna come from that perspective. If we look at a theater, these things are projection designers, there's like an engineer in charge, there's a media server programmer. But one thing there's a projection designer, their decisions. They're helping a little bit with the media server stuff. They're helping with how are we doing signal flow. And when these people go to work in some other industry, often their titles are changed, right? Even though this job is the same, the title's totally different. So if we looked at something like fixed installation, there's like a content team or an art agency that's doing the creative, right? Are they the projection designer? Well, no, it's a little different, but it's kind of sort of the same, right? There's some sort of project manager on the integration side that's doing a lot of the video engineering and actually speccing that system. Is that kind of like an EIC for a live event? Well, so kind of, sort of, yeah, they're very similar things. We still have a media server programmer. That seems pretty fixed, but maybe the responsibilities are a little different. Where does something like a screens producer go, right? They have their fingers on everything. They're looking at all of these things together. What does that title mean to the rest of those people? What does that title mean? We haven't made, again, this is not saying we need to fix it. It's just we need to make a decision about something, right? So current practices, I'm going to talk again from the theater industry, the production electrician. I'm going to talk about the light plot real quick. I can look at this piece of paper, and with very little information, I can tell you exactly how to hang this light plot. I need hardly anything else. I don't even need a key to know exactly how to hang this and how to use this. I know that this X here means that that's a 19-degree barrel, and I can hang that light. I know exactly how to turn it on. I know exactly where to go for its power information. I know exactly where to do these things from one sheet of paper that that I can hand to anyone, and they can figure that information out. If we look at something like a sound rack or a sound system diagram, there are standards about directionality of signal. There's standards about line jumps and line breaks, and lines being dashed or dotted for different things. There's even some color keys down here for this specific one, right? Let's take a look at the video industry, and it's time for my favorite game. This is going to be Guess That System Diagram. I created this with ChatGPT. I take no credit for this. I just thought it was kind of fun. It was like one prompt. So here we have a system with, we see 4 devices here that have HDMI and HDMI 1, HDMI 1 and HDMI 2, HDMI 2 and HDMI 2. Friends, what is this device?
Media server?
Media server? Matrix?
Yeah.
Nope, it's an FX4. Yeah, it's an FX4. It's the thing that's running out there, right?
That's probably D3.
Yeah, there's D3 media servers are over here. Okay. Yeah, so all right. Here we got another one. Okay, this is a theater. This is a theater program. Friends, what cable is this?
Fiber to the balcony.
Hey, fiber. This is a balcony fiber snake. Hey, not bad, right? Context clues, using some context clues. All righty. Hello. Okay, here we got another one. I've blurred out all of these cables. Friends, yeah, well. The question here was what are these cables running in between everything? Right? These cables have no labels, there's no color, there's nothing. The cable going in and out of this Azure router is labeled the exact same as this Cat5 cable over here. Okay, these are projects. I've asked permission to use these. Again, I'm not calling anyone out, right? This is just where we're at right now. All right, one more. All right, what's this system diagram?
The network.
Network. Nope, this is a family tree of Walt Disney family. Yeah. Yeah, this is this is a Disney family tree. Yeah. So, I think that I think, and I'm gonna put my Bob Barker microphone away. I think it is just time that we start looking at this because system diagrams are such a critical component of what we do here. And I feel like everyone has their own thing. If everyone's doing it their own way, and that's not to say any of them are bad. It just means that company A can't give a system diagram to company B, and the communication happens fluidly, right? We have to kind of reinvent the wheel every time.
So,
So why should we adopt standards? Accessibility and equity, better communication, right? This is why also why do sound people say check 1, 2? It's on 3 left. Yeah, on 3 left. I thought that was kind of funny. Cross-disciplinary collaboration, right? So relevant XKCD, yeah. Collaboration between different disciplines like fixed installation and virtual production and live event. Easier support and maintenance. Great movie. And we can create a library of projects, a data set to really look at all these things for. So I'm going to kind of talk about each of these individually a little bit, and we'll talk through them and why I think they're important. So accessibility, think about the youths. One of my favorite movies. Think about the youths, right? More and more people are coming up into this industry that are young and driven. The barrier to entry for digital media is getting lower and lower and lower, right? This is more powerful than the computer I had in high school. I learned Photoshop for the first time in high school. Everything I did there, I can do on this phone now. The barrier to entry is getting so much lower, and we as an industry should be setting things up so that way younger folks can not adhere to our standards, but do things the way that we want them to be seen, so we understand them coming in, and we don't have these portfolios where we have to fill in the gaps of, well, I think you could maybe do the job. I think you can do the job. I don't know. Let's hire you, and oh, whoop, no, you definitely can't do the job. I have a lot more to teach you, right? We lower the barrier of entry to our industry. We widen the industry. We can get changing career folks over, and no more hopefully unintentional gatekeeping, right? I think that was a huge problem in the past. I think a lot of that gatekeeping has gone away, but it's still a problem. It's still something that happens in this industry, and hopefully we can get that gatekeeping down or out entirely. Okay, let's talk about communication. So I want to talk about Go for Video, a play in 5X, theater person, a lot of these in here. So how are we going to trigger the projectors, right? We've got an install, we want to douse the projectors, okay? How are we going to do that? Well, we're on a Zoom call early on, the project manager is like, how are we going to douse the projectors? Well, we're gonna discuss bunch of different stuff. Well, we could use SACN, we could use something like PJ Link, we could use some TCP commands, we could develop something, we could put a hard down rate. We got a bunch of different ideas that we could use. Will they be triggered by a media server? Is QSys going to do it? How all these things, right? Okay, so who's doing what? Who's going to actually do that programming? Who's installing it? What's the protocol? We've made a decision. Okay, we've made a decision. We're going to do it with TCP. That this person's going to write it. This is how it's getting triggered. Okay, so now we arrive on site for installation, and the person on site goes, "How are we triggering the projectors?" Okay, so it's a 10-act play. So now we have to go ask where that email was again. How did we decide to do that? Oh yeah, let me just check with the PM. I forget where, okay, the PM needs to check with the integrator because that decision was made like 6 months ago. We made that call. Oh, we finally found it. Okay, success. I guess, it took an extra 2 days, but we finally remembered that we were doing it with TCP. This person was programming it. This was the signal it was sending, yada, yada, right? So this communication, how can we make this process better, right? I think we can make better documents that document those decisions and are clearly communicated and stored in a way that everyone in the industry knows how to ask for them. If we title that document something, then like the IP scheduler, the video comms document, right? Like everyone has this thing that they do already. These documents exist out in the world. I'm not saying they don't, but everyone calls it a different thing. Everyone has titled it a different thing, and it records different sets of information. And I'm proposing that we all work together to come up with what that document ought to be and what it should be titled, like a channel hookup or a lighting plot or a section. And that way anyone can ask for it and we just know, boom, that's the document we need. It's in the Google Drive that everyone has access to, and there it is, right? What's the IP address? Where's the signal coming from? What port is it on? What's the protocol? All that information can just, boom, be there for this thing and for the next thing, right? If it's integrating with something like Isaac, here's all the communication. Here's the ports, here's everything that we're doing. So now, okay, how are we going to trigger the projectors? We generate the video comms document in that meeting. We talk about our ideas. We make the decision. They're recorded. It's in that document. Programmer has, the schedule when they arrive online, that schedule or that video comms document, and then success, right? They get there. We don't need this last one. Okay, cross-disciplinary collaboration. Okay, we're going to see if this works. It did. Okay. And let's go to, I couldn't get YouTube to do the link here, but the question is something like this.
Is made with
Let's get it to jump to the right spot, give or take. Buffering. Spin around here. There we go. Okay, so is this event? Is this a live event or is this virtual production? Right? It's taking place inside of a virtual production volume. It's a live event that's happening, that's being broadcast, right? There's a stage, there's people on that stage, but very clearly we're not doing film. What is this, right? This is some weird hybrid event that we're doing here. No, I just want to jump to the next slide. Okay, so our industries are no longer as segmented as they once were, right? That's, I think, where I'm going with this. And standardizing these practices allows that fluidity, allows someone who works in live event to go to a virtual production stage and we can speak the same language and have the same documentation, right? We've got live events is like theater, concerts, corporate, virtual production, XR, and ICVFX, set extension VR, D&D. I thought that was a fun little joke to put in there. Fixed install, right? We've got themed entertainment, permanent installations, temporary installations where they're temporary, but they're set up for like years at a time, right? All these things are different events. Where's broadcast fit into this now? Broadcast is starting to take all these elements and put them together, right? And broadcast has their own set of documents that they use. How can we standardize these things to work across all the industries together? All right, selfishly, I'll put my PIXERA hat on for just like 2 seconds. Makes support so much easier. Makes support so much easier. It's actually really funny. There was a talk happening yesterday, and Brant pulled up a picture of the Newark like pylons is what we call them. I forget exactly what the project was called, but it's the install happening at Newark Terminal. There's these pylons, right? And that's a PIXERA project, and we've done a lot of support on that project. I have asked for a system diagram many, many times on that project, and I still don't have it. And it's not because it doesn't exist. It's just because Joe Technician on site doesn't know how to go access that document, right? So one doc to rule them all, one doc to guide them, one doc to bring them all, and in a 3-ring bind them. Just Florian, help me out. Yeah, Flo, help me out with that. Chat GPT a little bit too, so credit there. But yeah, I'm imagining some sort of document that's like a 2-page standardization of the kind of the basic information of a project, right? How many media servers or video devices are there? Right? How many outputs are being used? How many projectors? How many LEDs? What is all this basic information? What's the total resolution? How many pixels are you pushing? What's the content codec? What's the frame rate? What's your color space? The spec sheet, right? The spec sheet exists, but it doesn't exist in a standardized format. People do all their different things and ad agencies react to it instead of being proactive and knowing what these things are supposed to look like. What interactive elements are you using? Are you using something like Touch Design? Or are you using a LiDAR scan? What's your signal flow? How many conversions are being done? Do you have a display port to HDMI? Do you have an HDMI to an SDI? What is that? What does that look like on a system diagram? How are we calling these things out? Because those are high rate failure points, right? How many times have we been in a system and it's a converter, right? It's an adapter that's bad, but that adapter doesn't exist anywhere on the system diagram because it was like, ah, just throw it in there, it'll be fine, right? And then perhaps last and most importantly, we can create a library of projects, right? We have a repository of projects to help incoming industry members so that they can look at them and reference them and see what these things are supposed to look like. So that all the information is on there. It becomes easier to archive things. How many servers did it take to drive a number of pixels with LiDAR tracking in real time, right? If we have some of those and we have what that system looks like, then we can, as a community, start going to that and saying, oh, these people did that. And it took 4 servers and it took this much, cable and okay, this is a little more than what's budgeted over here. We should talk about that. And we don't have to, throw a dart every time. So what can we do? Yeah, so what can we do? Man, I'm blasting through this thing. I'm nervous. So what can we do? Well, this is where USITT comes into play. Who's heard of USITT before? Most people, that's good. Okay. So USITT is the United States Institute for Theater Technology. Will anyone know what its claim to fame is? Other than Ryan, because I talked to him about it. So USITT created the DMX 512 standard about 35 years ago. So in 1990, they created the DMX 512 standard that eventually was, born out of that was like SACN and ArtNet, right? So they created that standard, and that's a precedent for I think what we're doing here. So each kind of discipline has its own commission. It is an education focused organization for kind of theater technicians in the education space. So, graduating seniors, juniors of colleges at theater programs across the country. And something that USITT is doing now that I think is really smart is they are broadening kind of the technical theater definition and broadening it to incorporate things like concerts and things like installations and their new motto is powering live entertainment, which I think is a good thing, right? So they're growing that footprint. So USITT is I'm on this commission and I'm trying to put together a task force to do this through that organization in partnership with Framework. We need people like people in this room and people at this conference to buy into this idea. Because if USITT puts together a set of recommended practices for students, I want that to be the same thing that all of the people who hire people and work in this industry at large to agree on what that's supposed to look like, right? If it's a bunch of university professors in a room agreeing on it, it's going to look wildly different and frankly not going to be as useful, right? So man, it's hot in here. Just me?
It is.
Yeah, okay, great. It's hot in here. Yeah. Great. So what's this timeline look like? Well, early 2026, right? We're going to gather info. We're going to assemble a team. We're going to get folks together. Whether that is, thank you so much. Yeah, it's that even that like helped a lot. I can like feel the. So we're going to get a group together and start looking at what people are doing, what we ought to be doing. Late 2026, we're going to create that document together, right? That group is going to create that document, probably some working sessions at things like LDI or Infocom, cross talk about how we're doing this, what that document really actually looks like. 2027 is hopefully when we're going to review and publish it, right? That would be the idea, is that we can publish this in 2027, maybe late 2027. And then eventually, hopefully, we can actually submit it to ANSI as a true standard, which is a much harder and more thorough process, but I believe that we kind of have the pieces to get that done potentially, especially because I think the digital media industry has a lot more, we have a lot more need and investment of all of us to get into this and do it together. So I'm hopeful that we can get an actual standard through ONSI. We'll see. It's a little tougher. So next steps. Want to join the task force? Here's a QR code. Put in your information. I'll get in touch. And I'll let you know about the meetings happening and when it's happening. You know, there will be discussion on the Discord, hopefully, the framework Discord where I can maybe start a channel there, talk to Laura about that, and we can have some of this discussion there. The other thing you can do is if you have some ideas or you have some paperwork that you want to submit, here's another QR code for Google Form that will get you to a place where you can submit some paperwork. If you think, hey, we think this is a really good example of what we want here, great, I want to see it. I want to know about it. And you know, I think that's where this is going to come from is getting that that energy from everyone else together. So yeah, man, I blew through that, maybe because it's really hot. I'm gonna open this one too. Noise be damned. Because I am sweating. All right. So that's my pitch. I'm gonna leave these QR codes up. Questions? And yeah, Amanda.
You proposed a situation or it could be like a collaborative thing, but I'm also wondering about where some of the organization would come in. I know it's more of like maybe more protocol than like technical documentation standard.
Yeah. I've definitely given it thought, but I think we're still too early in the process to know if they would be necessary, right? And that's all that to say, I hope whatever we come up with, whatever this thing is something that they like when we have it as a thing. I think that's when we can say, hey, we're doing this. We kind of want your reaction to it. Would you, you know, is this something you're interested in? So I've definitely thought about it and yeah, definitely open to it, but they're more signal protocol than kind of documentation writ large. But yes, for sure. Yeah.
I seem to remember that there were USITT standards for drones back, 15, 20 years ago.
Let's talk about it.
Because, I mean, I was wondering, like, if you want, like, and that, I think was more primarily just about drones. Like line diagrams.
Yeah.
And I know, like, in the AV industry, some of it's been adopted and there's a little bit, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
Still, like, how do you get people to adopt it and, you know,
Like, how do we? Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the answer to that question is we are positioned, we being like the digital media space. Oh, I gotta do a keep. We being the digital media space, I think because of an organization like Framework, we are much more well positioned to actually get buy-in from the industry partners we need to make this kind of thing happen, which is a lot harder to do for the more entrenched industries out there, like lighting or you know, it's hard to get lighting to change its mind. It's pretty, you know, pervasive throughout everything now. And architectural lighting looks a lot different than theater lighting now. But, you know, architecture video and theater video are way closer than and so I think, especially because of an organization like, because of an organization like Framework, the people are here and in this organization that this can, I think, permeate a lot further than just theater. And, you know, I think USITT is kind of the vehicle by which we can start this thing, but I don't think it's the end of it, right? I just think, you know, it's a place where, I know the desire is there and the precedent is there with USITT to do this kind of thing, right? This is the lighting documentation recommended practices, right? This is a 48-page document that talks about drafting standards and what, you know, plot looks like and how you're supposed to label stuff and what your, you know, typical things are. And, you know, what your paperwork's supposed to look like. And, you know, a lot of this, I think we could lift wholesale, right? There's already stuff on here about line drawings and all that. And so some of that work I think is done. But I think it's,
Big sentence there.
Avixa has their version, but you know, I think it's what we do is it's just slightly more specialized in a way that I think it's important in its time. So yeah.
So about it, but
Thank you.
one of the, one of the challenges I think that this project faces is that we often deal with computers
Mhm.
and consumer electronics and just products in general, like you're mentioning adapters.
Mhm.
Like, when you talk about the AV industry, like, great, I brought in, you know, a Blackmagic SDI converter, but then I'm doing SDI to the converter to HDMI to DisplayPort, and that DisplayPort is something that I got from B&H or, you know, Amazon, and that's going into like 3 different GPUs where, I think a lot of what we're talking about is like a video magic sheet.
I mean,
But
yeah.
I think given the complexities of the systems and the amount of pieces and failure points, I guess it's like, how do we, well, the question is like, how, and this could be, I don't know, tweeting the question, right? It was like, how do you condense that down?
Mhm.
Because we're talking across multiple protocols and it's not just VMAX, it's not just power.
Right.
It's TCP, it's UDP,
Yeah.
it's everything.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the unique position we're in, is that I think unlike lighting or sound, which, you know, is not, they're not changing. The thing they've done is it's kind of the same thing. You know, there's a little new stuff here and there, but you know, stayed pretty the same for the last few years.
Well,
Yeah, you know, so I think I don't know, and I want to get a group together to help solve that problem. How do you on a system diagram or in this informational packet, how do we say in shorthand that I don't know what's happening here, but it's noteworthy, right? Like, how do you say we did a bunch of conversions that it works for now, but like if someone in 3 years has to go troubleshoot that install, you know, how can we know where that thing is, right?
Especially because it's a little ambiguous, because if you look at light, look at light plot,
Yeah,
you don't necessarily know, because, you know, that there's an Edison you know, to whatever
No.
adapter here, the two first are here.
Right.
You just know that the circuit is split, right? Yeah. So where's gonna be the line of demarcation for our
yeah,
paperwork? And the other part of it, and I don't know, I'm not even sure I probably framed this question, but see, I guess we're also gonna wanna look at like the leading drafting tool providers, I'm saying the bad word, vector works.
Yeah.
Sorry, like, it's probably gonna make sense to draft
Yeah.
their involvement.
Absolutely.
It's trying.
Absolutely.
Cognitive retrieval.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, that's definitely a thing. You know, I think Marty has Gear Connect, which is something he, you know, is kind of trying to do like a more open kind of OmniGraphal type thing. But I think OmniGraphal, Gear Connect, you know, even Lucid Chart, if you use that, like all these things are, I think at a certain point we'll have to engage those folks. Yeah, for sure.
Come up with standardization for symbols.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think it's kind of a chicken or egg situation, but I think we kind of have the power between kind of framework, USITT, us in a room to say, hey, a bunch of people, you know, here's 20 people that have co-signed this document, and they, you know, it's a bunch of people that know what they're talking about. We want to implement this, and I think if we kind of present that as an idea, they will be much more willing to meet us halfway.
And we, like you guys, Hippo.
Exactly.
Sky.
Exactly.
We should come in behind to support this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that our devices are able to receive that information.
Exactly.
Output, like you did in the grant, and hey, now you can get a lot of the paperwork out of it.
Exactly. So, you know, I think that is a huge piece of this, is getting manufacturers on board too. And again, because framework has that buy-in, I think it's the, you know, no one I've talked to has been like, I don't really think we should do this, right? Every single person I've talked to is like, yeah, we do. Yeah, you know, everyone I've talked to is like, yeah, we do need to do that. And it's like, okay, well, I think there's enough kind of groundswell. And I guess I'm here to be the cheerleader to, I was a mascot after all, to get us there. And, I think, like I said, USITT has some of that precedent for creating these documents. So I know that can be a vehicle by which we create this document, right? And it can then go, I think, even further because what I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do is slightly more, I think, industry, supporting. It's not just for theater. I don't want it to just be for theater. So,
I was just thinking, like, I have a lot of perspective on this one. My side and of the, integrated systems. Because everything's, in my experience, I've tried to do this at a few different jobs. Standardized, documentation, and it gets more and more complicated every year.
Yeah.
Systems all become over the network and all combined into, and then to kind of separate out, it just becomes a very multi-headed extension. I don't know if there's a question, but like, how do you envision ways of sort of keeping this, like, there's the approach of like just oversimplifying it, or going down the rabbit hole of documenting every single
little thing.
every step of
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
10 gigs per year going to this breakup, and so it becomes very quickly
Yeah.
all encompassing.
I mean, I can see a world where Framework has like a working group that works on an update every year.
Yeah.
I can also see a world where like we put like kind of the most general thing out there, and then in that document say, from here out, it's up to you again. I can see a couple of different options there.
And also, like, in the sense that, like, some of the responsibility, the implicit responsibility on the lighting side, for instance, like, Rogue releases their drafting.
Yeah, exactly.
Installation, like, so
Yeah.
again, the manufacturers.
Yeah.
Can participate to take some of that load off the standards.
And I think, and I clocked your hand, so I'll get to you in a sec. But I think one thing that's important here is I think the system diagram is kind of like the easiest, for lack of a better term, it's the best punching bag here because it's something that we all see, and like it's a very obvious problem in that like everyone does it slightly differently. All the big integrators do it slightly differently, but that's like the way that they do it or the way that this place does it. And I think one of the things that's important is like I want to create some level of this documentation that is like client legible too, so that the client side can say, well, it's about this much stuff and I want this many things, and that has a way to ripple down to when those technical decisions are made. It's all collected into the whatever this 2-sheet piece of paper is that the video Bible, the whatever, I don't know what it's called. I legitimately don't, but yeah.
I'm very new to this world. Thank you. And it's actually, what you just said is exactly what I was going to suggest. Being it that this seems like the right organization to create this sort of document, we have like lighting, plot, audio, whatever the name is. Maybe consider calling it a framework.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea.
Second that, it all starts with the design, and a lot of this, I mean, in the design, if there's standards of design specification, architecture,
Yeah.
that would also fit in framework. Because most of the time where documentation fails to deliver is when it changes from a design to fabrication,
Yeah.
fabrication, physical dimensions. And that's where you lose the information.
Yeah. And
then the client compares all those variables.
Yeah.
So.
And I think like we all know that. And I think I'm sitting here in this room or in all these other rooms and all these other conversations, just like, but we are smart and we can fix that. And I think that takes buy-in from everyone, right? I think part of it is it's not just like design to fabrication integration. It's like it has to go both ways, right? It's back up the chain too, and kind of saying, hey, do you have that thing for us? Or, how does that relationship work as well? And again, I think unlike lighting, like if you tried to do this in lighting or in scenery, it just wouldn't work, right? Those industries are just so far apart now. But digital media is getting closer and closer and closer together because the industries are just rapidly blurring, right? It's becoming fixed install production concert, as an event. And they're not so separated anymore. So yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, Abby.
It's just like a government guy, I don't know if it exists or not, but, talking about your, a little bit about like all the different tools for drafting, there's not really standard thing, perspective, whereas for like Euro, there's different levels of accessibility, for paying for those.
Yeah.
And so, kind of like going off of like 3D drawings, like, okay, like PIXERA can only accept OBJ, which is, there's always a tool that can export this in the format that it needs. So could I say, like, maybe there's like some world where they can export for, I don't want to draw on vector versus we'll just send in this format and bring that into our standard choice.
Be great.
Well, framework AI.
And Matt's developing. Back here, yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of like negatives here, right? Because like you were saying earlier, is that like just from the network connection cable, that's one statement, like cable is going out, and technically that can hit the vast variety of systems for multiple protocols and ports and stuff like that. So that's a software developer standpoint and stuff. It seems like there's just like a lot of layers of these kind of diagrams that kind of call out specific
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
How it communicates with different boxes.
And I think that's one of the things, again, that's kind of a unique challenge that I think digital media land is set up to solve, right? I see that as like, yeah, we need to come up with how we're going to communicate that this Ethernet cable is carrying 7 VLANs and it's doing all these, like, there's really no good way to do that right now. And if someone has one, let's hear it. Like, let's hear it and let's put it into this document and let's like make it a thing so that way we can all start doing it so that system diagrams become easier to read and we know how important that Ethernet cable is. So when it breaks, we know all the things that broke.
It's like IT.
Yeah.
Because we have to have a way to communicate that to them too,
Yeah.
because they don't know anything.
But there's always different audiences and things need to be.
Yeah. So
I wondered if there's any like thought about, what was the last industry that got off this thing? It's okay, sort of Reddit and BIM 360 stuff. BIM has been out there for a while for all the other trades, and that's how they're doing this, right?
Yeah.
Everything's in one master
Yeah.
file, and it spits out all the information it needs.
Yeah.
Even in AU world, it's still not there yet, right? And I think that's probably the dash.
Well, and also I think Revit in a lot of ways is like using, a jackhammer for a tack hammer. Like it's just way overkill for what we are doing, but it has its place. And I think talking about, the kind of other softwares that we engage with, I do think it becomes a part of the conversation at some point. I just don't know when that is.
Just video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple, like, is that HDMI?
Yeah.
Is that, DisplayPort? Is that Ethernet?
Yeah.
There isn't any standard statement of lighting, STA. Line stash,
Yeah.
simple, endpoints on these lines, like, there's nothing. I think you gave a great example of reading a light plot. Yeah, you can read that and know exactly what you need to do. But I think the complexity is the deal with all those things.
Yeah. And
to put a projector on it, as a symbol, it's like, great. Is it getting PJ? Is it getting scan? Like all these things need to be folded into that.
Yeah.
And it becomes how do you represent that?
Yeah. And I think my response to that is exactly.
Yes.
And we have to do better, right? Like we have to make that call as an industry because it's only going to get more complicated. And we got to start having a way to communicate these things at a consistency that makes it so that, that we know exactly where to find that information because the systems are only going to get more complicated. And again, this goes back to that barrier of entry thing, right? More, what was a $100,000 projector 5 years ago is selling secondhand for $5,000 right now. So that complexity, just all that comes way down in price and in accessibility. And schools now, I mean, this place has all these incredible tools and is doing all really cool stuff here. But I bet if we asked all the students here, are you student here? What do your system diagrams look like? All right, case closed. So yeah, I think it's like I said, this is a call to action. This is a, I want to call everyone in. I think framework is a great place to do it. And like I said, USITT is kind of the vehicle by which I know I can get this document out into the world because the precedent is here. So, you can't say that here. Yeah, but yes.
Seems like the best first step would be to have framework post the Google Docs portal or something, where you can ask people around like one of this conference to submit their best practices.
Yeah.
See, and then have a review session where you take, oh, this is a really good idea, this is a good idea, and try to collect the good ideas
Yeah.
on spot.
Yeah, I love that. I'll work with Laura on that. All right, anything else? Well, thanks, y'all. I really appreciate it. Again, thanks for coming into the small but mighty team here.